I'm 70 years old this year. At this age, many people assume my life must be difficult. I live alone in a small apartment, I don't have much savings, and I no longer work. But if you ask me whether I'm happy, I'll smile and say, I've never felt more peaceful or more content than I do now. Sounds strange, doesn't it? How could a 70-year-old woman, living on less than $1,000 a month in Social Security, claim to be happier than ever? The answer lies in the smallest things, the things I never noticed for most of my life. When I was young, I believed happiness came from money. I worked tirelessly for 40 years just to build what I thought was a stable life. A big house, a good car, a comfortable bank account that promised security in old age. I thought that once I retired with all those things, I'd finally be free and happy. But the truth was, the more I had, the more afraid I became of losing it. The more I accumulated, the more anxious I felt. Somewhere along the way, I stopped living to love, laugh, and enjoy simple things, and started living just to protect what I owned. At 62, the company I had worked for over 3 decades announced massive layoffs. In one morning, I lost my job. It felt like the whole world collapsed. Everything I had built, my sense of safety, pride, confidence, vanished overnight. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the bills, terrified of what tomorrow would bring. I cried for nights, feeling helpless and afraid. I thought my life was over. But in those darkest days, I discovered something. Even without a job or paycheck, I still had my health. I still had hands that could cook, legs that could walk to the park, eyes that could watch the sunrise. I had neighbors who knocked on my door just to check in. And most importantly, I had time, something I never had when I was busy chasing money. So I started to change. Slowly at first. I sold my car, realizing I barely used it. I moved to a smaller, cheaper apartment that somehow felt warmer and more alive. I learned to cook with simple, inexpensive ingredients that nourished my body and soul. I began walking every morning. Not to exercise, but to breathe again, to smell the grass, hear the birds, and feel the peaceful sleep. It can pay the bills, but not peace of mind. She was right. When I stopped centering my life around money, I finally felt free. I no longer compared, no longer wished for more. I started to enjoy the simple life I once thought was poor, a life rich in time, feelings, and gratitude. People often ask, "Don't you feel lonely living alone with so little?" I used to, but then I realized loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from not loving yourself. When I learned to care for myself, to talk kindly to my heart, I felt lighter. I played music, read books, cooked meals, planted flowers. I tended to my small balcony garden, and every time the flowers bloomed, it felt like I was blooming too. I also began giving back to others. At my age, I can't do much, but I can listen, and I can care. I joined a small senior volunteer group that cooks soup for the homeless. Every time I handed someone a warm bowl and saw their smile, I felt something deep and healing. Joy, I realized, doesn't come from what you get. It comes from what you give. One winter afternoon, I went to the park where golden leaves covered the path. On a bench sat an old man reading. I sat beside him and we started talking about the weather, about aging, and about the fear of outliving our money. He smiled and said, "Money can run out, but peace of mind doesn't have to. As long as you can still appreciate your breath, today is a day worth living." I never forgot his words. They changed how I saw everything. Now, when I wake up each morning, I no longer ask, "How much money do I need to get through this month?" I ask, "What can I do today to make this day meaningful?" Maybe it's just making tea, calling someone, or walking under the sunlight. I've learned happiness doesn't come when you have enough money. It comes when you feel enough inside. I used to live my life chasing safety. Now I live it to feel peace. At 70, I no longer need to chase anyone or prove anything. I just want to slow down, listen to my heart, and smile at each sunrise. I may not have much money, but I have something far more precious: time, freedom, and a calm heart. When you understand that, you realize happiness doesn't need to be bought. It's been here all along, waiting for you to see it. And maybe it's only when we lose what we don't need that we finally gain everything we truly do. When I was younger, I thought that to live a good life, I had to spend more. I bought clothes to feel confident, furniture to make my home look happy, and ate at expensive restaurants thinking that was what it meant to enjoy life. But the more I spent, the emptier I felt. The joy faded in hours, replaced by anxiety about how to earn it back. After 60, when I had to live on a small income, I realized something. Spending less doesn't mean losing quality. It means gaining freedom. When you spend less, you start seeing what truly matters. You stop buying to fill emotional gaps and start choosing what brings genuine joy. I remember the moment that realization struck. One morning, I opened my closet and saw nearly 20 sweaters, most barely worn. I asked myself, why did I buy all this? And I realized it wasn't need, it was fear. Fear of lacking, fear of being less than others. That day, I started decluttering. I donated more than half of what I owned. The room looked emptier, but my mind felt lighter than ever. Sitting in that simpler space, I could finally breathe. I also changed how I viewed money. It used to be my goal. Now it's just a tool. Money sustains life. It doesn't define it. Once I understood that, I stopped being afraid. I began tracking my expenses, not to punish myself, but to understand myself. Each week, I'd sit down with pen and paper and ask, what truly made me happy this week? Surprisingly, it wasn't the big purchases. It was the small ones. Fresh flowers for the table, ingredients for a homemade soup, or a postcard sent to an old friend. Those simple things filled me with joy, while the expensive buys only left emptiness. I learned that living more isn't about how home feels so peaceful. I wish I could live like this. I laughed. You know, I told her, I used to think happiness meant having more. Now I know, the less I have, the easier it is to smile. Helen nodded and sighed. Maybe I should learn to spend less too. I keep buying, but I don't feel any happier. That conversation stayed with me. I realized most of us aren't lacking money. We're lacking clarity. We don't know what truly makes us happy, so we keep spending, trying to fill emotional gaps that money never will. After 70, I stopped trying to fill those gaps. I chose to slow down. I spend on what warms my heart, like a soft blanket for reading nights, or a small donation to the local food bank. I don't buy luxury, but I purchase peace. Spending less helped me live more, not just materially, but spiritually. I have more time because I'm not busy shopping. I have more joy because I'm not afraid of losing what I don't need. Some afternoons, I just sit by the window, watching sunlight fill the room, listening to old songs on the radio, and I feel full, completely full. One day, I met an elderly couple at the grocery store. They bought only a few items, and when checking out, the husband smiled and said, "We only buy what we'll truly eat." I laughed. "That's a smart way to live." He smiled back and said, "After 70, I realized we don't need more things. We just need more time and more joy." I never forgot that. Living long isn't just about keeping the body healthy. It's about keeping the heart light and unburdened by things that don't matter. Living simply also taught me gratitude for every dollar I have. When you don't have much, you start to cherish everything. A lower electric bill, a neighbor sharing vegetables, or finding an old book at the library. Each small thing feels like a gift. I once read, "A happy person isn't someone who has much, but someone who enjoys what they have." I understand that now more deeply than ever. Maybe simplicity itself keeps me healthy. When I stopped eating for emotions and spending impulsively, my body felt lighter, my sleep deeper, my mind calmer. People don't age because of years, they age because of stress. When you simplify, your mind relaxes and your body heals. Now at 70, I look back and smile. I spend less than ever, yet I live more fully than I ever have. I'm no longer haunted by what I lack, but grateful for what I have. I'm no longer afraid of poverty, because I've learned this truth. If you know how to live, even with little money, you can still be rich. Rich in time, love, and joy. That's the first secret I want to share with you. Spending less doesn't make you deprived. It sets you free. When you stop chasing possessions, you start returning to yourself. And there, within you, lies the truest form of happiness, one no one can ever take away. Gratitude and slowing down. For more than half my life, I lived in a rush. Every morning, I'd gulp down my coffee, hurry out the door, and squeeze into traffic. I worked, ate lunch in a hurry, worried, planned, and chased deadlines. Even on vacations, I couldn't stop checking my phone or thinking about work. I was terrified of wasting time. I used to think that if I slowed down, I'd fall behind. But at 70, I finally learned a simple truth that took me a lifetime to understand. Slowing down isn't losing. It's finally beginning to live. The day I retired, everything went silent. No phone calls, no meetings, no alarms. At first, I felt lost. I didn't know what to do with my time. The world I knew shrank to a few walls and a patch of sky outside my window. I felt invisible. Yet in that stillness, I began to hear things I'd missed before. The sound of rain on the roof, the wind slipping through the window, even the quiet rhythm of my own heartbeat. One autumn morning, I sat by the window watching golden leaves fall. I thought of my younger years, when all I did was run, never sit still. I realized that for decades, I had lived as if life were a race. I raced against co-workers, against expectations, against time. But the faster I ran, the further I drifted from the reason I started. Now, as age reminds me that time waits for no one, I've learned to stop. Not because I'm weaker, but because I want to feel every remaining moment with all my senses. Gratitude. And that changed everything. When I was younger, I rarely said thank you. I thought it was just politeness. But after losing what I once took for granted, I realized gratitude is the art of living well. I'm grateful every morning my eyes open to light. Grateful for legs that still carry me to the park. Grateful for the sound of birds outside my window. Grateful for the strength to cook lunch or wash my own clothes. I'm even grateful for rainy days. They remind me life isn't just sunshine. Gratitude showed me I was never lacking. It stopped me from counting what I'd lost and helped me see what I still had. When you focus on what remains instead of what's gone, you realize how full life still is. One day, I met a woman older than me named Margaret. She lived in a nursing home with no family left. When I asked if she ever felt lonely, she smiled and said, "No, dear. I thank God every day that I can still breathe. Every morning I open my eyes, see the sky and say, 'Thank you, Lord, for letting me stay one more day.'" Her words silenced me. I had read hundreds of books and listened to dozens of talks about happiness, but none described joy as deeply as she just did. Since that day, every morning I whisper, "Thank you, life." No special reason, just because I've been given one more day. And that alone is reason enough. As I slowed down, I began to notice others more deeply, the laughter of children playing outside, the mailman's footsteps, the vendor's cheerful greeting. I realized life never lacks beauty. We just move too fast to see it. One afternoon, I saw a little boy helping an old woman cross the street. I stopped and watched, and tears filled my eyes. Not from sadness, but from warmth. In a world full of worries, small kindnesses still exist. They may be small, but they keep the world from turning cold. I also learned to forgive, others and myself. When you slow down, Old memories return. The words that hurt you. The regrets you buried. I used to blame myself for not being wiser, for not saving more, for not loving myself better. But now I know, we all did the best we could with what we had. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to let the pain rule your life anymore. I can now smile at the past because I know, without those mistakes, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Aging isn't just accepting wrinkles, it's accepting yourself. One winter morning, as I made tea, I heard a small sparrow singing outside my window. It perched on the cold railing, trembling in the wind. I opened the door and placed a few crumbs. It hopped over and pecked them, one by one. I sat quietly watching it and realized, I'm just like that bird. Small, fragile, but still alive. Still finding joy in what little I have. I understood then. Slowing down doesn't mean stopping. It means living deeper. Now, every day feels like a gift. I no longer chase time. I walk beside it. I no longer fear tomorrow because I've learned to treasure today. I no longer wish for more because I'm grateful for what I already have. If you're listening and you feel tired, if you feel too old, too slow, remember, you can start again, right now. Take a deep breath. Whisper a small thank you. Sit still for 5 minutes and feel the silence around you, because in that silence, you may finally find what you've been chasing all your life. Peace. Gratitude and slowing down. That's the second secret to true happiness after 70. You don't need money or success. You just need to pause long enough to see that you already have everything you need. And sometimes, only when you slow down, does life finally begin to smile back at you. Caring for the soul like caring for the body. When I was younger, I thought self-care meant eating healthy, exercising, staying in shape and getting enough sleep. I spent decades taking care of my body, vitamins, sugar-free diets, regular checkups, but I forgot the most important part, caring for my soul. Because a healthy body carrying a tired heart isn't really living. I lost my husband at 58. It was the hardest blow of my life. Started walking outside, just a few minutes a day around the block. At first, my steps were heavy, but slowly they grew lighter. I began noticing the color of the sky, the sound of birds, the wind through my hair. The world hadn't lost its beauty. I just hadn't opened my eyes. I learned to talk to myself. It may sound strange, but I used to fear being alone because silence made me face my thoughts. Now I speak to myself kindly. When I make mistakes, I don't scold myself. When I feel weak, I don't feel ashamed. I say, it's okay. You did your best today. Surprisingly, that one gentle sentence made me feel loved again. By me. I started writing. Not for anyone to read, but to release what was inside. I wrote about fears, memories, and people I'd lost. Each line felt like an exhale, freeing me from the weight of the past. Writing helped me look back without pain, only gratitude, for every wound taught me how to love deeper. Some afternoons, I'd play the old songs my husband and I loved. I thought I'd cry, but instead, I smiled. I closed my eyes and imagined him sitting there, reading his newspaper, glancing at me with that familiar smile. I realized those we truly love never leave. They simply move to a quieter place in our hearts. After 60, I realized the soul needs exercise just like the body. If the body lies still too long, muscles weaken. If the soul stays close too long, feelings harden. So I began soul exercise each day. Talking, listening, laughing, forgiving. I joined a reading club at the local library. Every week I met new friends, some 65, some 80, but all eager to keep learning and feeling. We didn't just read books, we shared our lives. One woman spoke of her broken marriage, another of her estranged son, another of her fear of growing old alone. I learned that everyone carries wounds. The difference is whether you hide them or turn them into light. Those meetings became vitamins for my spirit. I laughed more, talked more, and my heart slowly warmed again. A friend from the group, Linda, 72, once said, "Happiness isn't the absence of sorrow, it's being able to smile through it." I wrote that down because it captured exactly what I felt. I also learned that the soul needs quiet. When I was young, I feared silence. It made me feel lonely. Now I crave it. Every afternoon, I turn off the TV and phone, sit in my chair, and watch the sunset paint the wall. I let my thoughts drift. In those moments, I feel closer to myself than ever before. We think happiness is somewhere far away, in plans, in travel, in success, but often it's right here, in the moment we sit still, breathe deeply, and feel peace. Another lesson: the soul needs to let go. That took me years to learn. Letting go is hard, especially when you've held on too tightly to memories, people, or pain. But if you never release, you'll always carry the weight. I used to keep my husband's letters, his old shirts, faded photographs. I thought throwing them away meant losing him forever. One day, I opened the drawer and asked myself, how long would he want me to hold on to this sadness? I placed my hand on a photo and whispered, "Thank you for being here with me." Then I put it away, not to forget, but to remember with a smile instead of tears. A healthy soul also needs nourishment from kindness. I began reconnecting in small ways, baking cookies for neighbors, sending cards to old friends, smiling at strangers. You'd be surprised how one kind word or gentle smile can brighten not only someone else's day, but your own. Once, a young waitress brought my drink and said, "You have such a kind smile." That single sentence made my whole day brighter. I thought, maybe when we make others feel seen, our own hearts heal a little too. If the body is the house we live in, the soul is the light inside it. You can repaint the walls, fix the roof, rearrange the furniture, but if the light goes out, the house stays dark. So every day I try to keep that light glowing, with gratitude, gentleness, and faith that there's still goodness waiting for me each morning. At 70, I don't fear wrinkles, grey hair, or happy alone. There's one truth you only truly understand as you grow older. The greatest fear in old age isn't illness, it's loneliness. I've lived through long days where the only sound was the ticking of a clock in an empty room. Dinner for one. The chair across from me stayed empty. The only noise came from the clink of a spoon against a plate. At first, I thought I had gotten used to it. But with time, I realized even silence can hurt. Some nights I'd turn on the TV just to hear voices, though I wasn't really watching. I'd leave the radio playing, not because I cared about the program, but because I needed another human voice in the house. I'd think of calling my daughter, but she was busy with work, and I didn't want to bother her. Then I'd sit quietly and wonder, have I become invisible? One winter afternoon, as snow fell outside my window, I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. No calls, no greetings, no smiles exchanged. I made myself a cup of tea, but my hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from the loneliness. Looking out the window, I saw my young neighbor helping an older woman shovel snow. They laughed together, and suddenly my eyes filled with tears, not from envy, but from realization. Joy doesn't come from what you have. It comes from who you have. The next day, I decided to change that. I didn't want the rest of my life to be just quiet afternoons by the window. I wanted to hear laughter again, to have someone to talk to look someone in the eye and say, "Good morning." I started small, by opening my heart. That day at the grocery store, I smiled brightly at the cashier and said hello. She looked surprised, then smiled back and said, "Have a wonderful day." It lasted only a few seconds, but it warmed me all day. I realized that connection doesn't start with grand gestures. It starts with a smile, I joined the senior group at the church nearby. At first, I was shy. I've always been quiet and thought no one would notice me. But when I stepped into that room full of laughter, the smell of cookies and stories from the past, I knew I had found the right place. We shared stories about our children, our marriages, our memories. Some talked more, some just listened. But in that room, no one felt forgotten. I began calling old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Some had lost their spouses, some had moved into care homes, some had simply drifted away. But the moment I heard their voices again, soft, aged, but familiar, it felt like stepping back into the warmth of youth. One friend said, "I thought you'd forgotten me." I replied, "No, I just forgot that I could still call." We both laughed, a laugh that erased years of silence. I realized that staying connected isn't just about finding joy for yourself, it's about giving joy to others. When I call someone to check in, I can feel the warmth in their voice. When I bake apple pie for my neighbor, I'm not just giving food. I'm giving the feeling of, you're not alone. One day, I brought a pie to Mr. George, the widower down the street. He opened the door, surprised, and said softly, "I can't remember the last time someone knocked on my door." We sat down, drank tea, and talked about our younger days. And in that simple moment, I realized, loneliness can disappear if you're willing to speak first. I also learned to connect in new, modern ways. My granddaughter taught me how to make video calls. The first time I saw her face on the screen, I laughed like a child. I could see her eyes, her smile, even the kitchen behind her. Though we were hundreds of miles apart, I felt closer than ever. Now, every Sunday evening, we video chat. She tells me about her week. "You treat yourself kindly. You naturally treat the world with kindness. I once thought I didn't need anyone. But the truth is, we all do. We're wired to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. And the miracle is, when you give that to others, it always comes back. Now, every morning, I greet the mailman with a smile. I chat with my neighbor as we water our plants. I ask the bus driver how his day's been. Each small word, each small gesture becomes a thread in the warm fabric of life. And the more threads you weave, the fewer holes loneliness can slip through. I remember a moment at church when an 83-year-old woman said, "I used to think I was just living to die. But now, because of this group, I feel like I'm living to love." I looked at her, and tears filled my eyes, because I knew exactly what she meant. Loneliness can slowly dim a person's light. But one hug, one glance, one simple "how are you today" can light the heart again. After 70, I realized that staying connected isn't just emotional, it's medicine. Studies show that older adults with strong social ties live longer, feel less depressed, and are happier. But I don't need research to believe that. I felt it myself. When you laugh with someone, share a story, or simply listen, your body changes. Your heartbeat softens, your mind clears, your spirit warms. Now, I'm no longer afraid of long rainy days. I know that whenever I reach out, the world will reach back. I know that if I smile first, someone will smile back. And I know that even if I live alone, I'll never truly be alone, because I stay connected to those I love, wherever they are, in whatever way I can. If you're listening to me now, and you live alone too, let me tell you this. Call someone today. You don't have to say much. Just say, "I miss you." Because sometimes that one simple sentence can save a silent heart on the other end of the line. Don't let old age build walls around you. Let it become a doorway, a way to open your heart and invite the world back in. Do good. The secret to keeping your heart young. I used to think that to help others you needed money. But after 70, I learned something far simpler and deeper. You don't need wealth to give. You just need a warm heart. One winter morning, I was standing in line at the senior center for a free meal. Beside me was a frail, tiny woman holding her tray with trembling hands. When it was her turn, the young volunteer added an extra ladle of soup and said, "It's cold today. Have a bit more to warm up." The woman smiled, her eyes shining. In that moment, I understood. Sometimes, one small act can warm an entire morning. From that day, I saw kindness differently. Doing good doesn't have to be big, it just has to be genuine. A greeting, a smile, a gentle touch. Sometimes they're worth more than money. I started volunteering at the soup kitchen run by the local church. Every Tuesday, a group of us, mostly silver-haired like me, gather to peel potatoes, chop vegetables, and make big pots of soup for the homeless. At first, I thought I was cooking because they needed food. But after a few weeks, I realized something else. I was being fed too. Each time I handed someone a bowl of hot soup, their frozen hands warming around it, my heart felt lighter. When you help someone stand, you stand taller yourself. Someone once asked, "Don't you get tired? You're not young anymore." I laughed and said, "No, I feel more alive than ever." Because when you help others, you stop thinking about your own pain. You forget your loneliness, your age, your aches. Because your heart is full of purpose. One afternoon, while serving soup in the park, a homeless man approached me and said, "Thank you. I can't remember the last time someone called me by my name." I looked at him and smiled. "Well, I'll call you Thomas, because I think that's your name." He laughed, surprised. "It is." That small exchange reminded me that remembering someone's name can remind them they still matter. I carried that spirit into my everyday life. At the market, I helped pick up someone's dropped groceries. In line, I let someone go ahead. When I get extra change, I slip it into the charity box. These small acts don't learned. Kindness isn't always an action. Sometimes it's simply presence. People think that old age is for resting. I believe the opposite. The older we get, the more good we should do. Not because we have more strength, but because we better understand the power of kindness. Kindness is exercise for the heart. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. There are days when my hands ache from arthritis, but when I walk into church and hear laughter, the pain fades away. An elderly volunteer named Rosa once told me, "I don't come here to cook, I come here to live." And I knew exactly what she meant. When we give, we reconnect with the world, and the world reconnects with us. Kindness heals. I once knew an old man who lived in silence for years. Then one day, he began delivering free newspapers around the neighborhood. Soon, everyone knew his name. They greeted him each morning, and he smiled again. That one simple habit changed his life. Happiness, I realized, is like a circle. When you give it away, it always finds its way back to you. And something magical happens every time I do something kind. I feel young again. Not in body, but in spirit. I go to bed with peace. I wake up energized. Now I understand why they say, those who give live the longest. It's not magic. It's because kindness keeps the heart soft, the mind bright, and life meaningful. And when life has meaning, every day feels worth living. I once told my daughter, "I can't leave you much money, but remember this, always help others when you can." Every act of kindness is a silent prayer for your own life. She hugged me and said, "Maybe that's why you always seem so young, Mum." I smiled. Maybe she's right. Kindness is the only fountain of youth I've ever needed. No surgery, no medicine, just compassion. At 70, I no longer fear time. I can't stop wrinkles, I can't freeze the years. But I can keep my heart young, and I found the way. Do something kind every day, no matter how small. Say thank you. Share a meal. listen to someone in pain, or simply smile at a stranger. Sometimes, one small act of kindness is enough to remind someone that life is still beautiful. If you're listening right now, here's my message to you. Don't wait until you have more money to help others. Don't wait until life slows down to spread love. Happiness doesn't wait for perfect timing. It begins the moment you act. Do something kind today, however small, however unseen. Because each time you do, you make the world softer and your heart a little younger.